All right, Hayden. Another great conception of a score. You really worked out a lot of stuff, and really does you credit. I think that the overall shape of things, the proportions are really great. I think that that is something that's so important in an orchestrator. And what I'm going to do now is just see how I can maximize the effect of what you want done here, right? That's my job as your orchestration coach for the next hour or so. So let's start off with a little bit of a discussion of the harp here. Yeah, I mean, just kind of the way that it's scored. I mean, it's well intentioned, but I don't feel that it is going to have as much impact on the music, right? Here you've got one note doubled by pizzicato. You've got another note doubled by oboe, and so on. And so, pretty much those instruments are going to absorb the sound of the harp in there. Now here you've got brass and winds. The some I don't know, some winds are playing forte, or you got piccolo and clarinet playing forte. You have your other winds playing fortissimo, and then you've got forte horns and mezzo forte trumpets and so on. And I mean, I don't think you need to do so much dynamic mixing, and just score the instruments in a general way in each group, and score them in registers that balance, and then they can all be fortissimo, right? Or all forte or whatever. Okay, but I just feel that the impact is so intense here that the harp just doesn't have a chance. You'd be better off scoring these as pizzicato in the strings, right? And then you could really hear that sense of pluck. The da 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 pluck da 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 pluck. So I think that would work out better. And same thing here. Now, as far as this right in here, this will work pretty nicely because all you have are violins and a bit of glockenspiel and the piccolo right in here. So the harp will definitely be heard right in there. But then when you get to I just feel the competition is a bit too much for the gentle harp right in here. So I would say just try to use harp in ways like if you have big splashy scoring, even things that are sort of medium loud but just very intense. That'll be enough to wipe out the harp. So it would be better to have the harp, if you want the harp to have a stronger role, to have that in places where the sound is really quite a bit softer and less involved. And if you want the harp to be more prominent in very loud sections, to have it do things like glissando, big rolled chords, figuration in places, sort of slots in the orchestral register that don't have a lot going on in them, right? Things like that. Okay, so now let's talk about evaluation criteria. So there's, of course, this the first consideration of the pitch weight being in the upper middle register of the piano, right, and how that could end up making things sound kind of tinny in the orchestration if that's all, if you basically transcribe directly for the entire screen that we've got here. Now you don't do that. You broaden out the sound picture. You're adding a little bit of timpani. You're adding some lower pitches. You get bigger. And so that's not a big concern. Then there's the next one, which I feel is more of a specific concern, which is that in the piano part, the thematic material of the first four bars repeats quite often. In fact, in the piano part, it's essentially the same thing twice. And then when it comes around again, it is more or less the same thing again. So if these two parts are identical, then is that something that you really want in your scoring? Well, you didn't do that, which I'm very, very happy about, right? I'm just kind of wondering whether or not we need woodblock both times. I mean, I think it's kind of cool. It sort of has this tick-tock kind of a sound. But, I mean, maybe you could pick one or the other, right? Just like, and then I think it would be more effective. Like, it would, like, or maybe the second time, right? But I love this. You have this real punchy scoring right in here with heavy brass, a single horn, and and our upper winds, right? I think that's really really nice. And then right in here we just have piccolo on top, a little bit of heavy brass in the middle, and more active timpani and more intense strings. I think that all works really really well. Pizzicato right here, right? But and then arco on top. I think that has a very very neat sound. You know, I think you could. I think you could go to fortissimo across all of your winds and have forte in all of your brass. I think that would just be stronger. And then if this has to be in there, then express it as fortissimo pizzicato. And then here, obviously you can't do the same thing with fortissimo pizzicato, but I mean, why do the same thing twice anyways, right? So don't worry about that. If you have to have it in, though, you could express it as wind, like little short accented bursts and winds. And I think it's fine if you just bring everything down one dynamic notch, forte here and here and mezzo forte there. I think that's also works great. So our as to the orchestration of it, I feel it's nice and strong. I mean, I love the idea of the trombone pitching in here in octaves with the first trumpet, and then on that we've got on top of that we've got our stacked first flute and piccolo. That's also quite nice. And then here, piccolo above by 2 octaves, and then first violin in the middle and trumpet on the bottom. That also works really really well, and it gives it. I mean, it's similar, but it's different enough to where you get a contrast, and that is so lovely. So our next 2 concerns are the melodic development soaring quite high, and the accompaniment figures covering a wide range. Right. So with the accompaniment figures, you kind of decided to have the harp kind of play the high note, but there's no reason why your first violins couldn't just reach up there and pluck a high B. There's nothing hard about that at all, right? In fact, like the way that I would finger this would be pretty much first position on this, and then reaching up to, then just kind of reaching up to grab that B off of the E string. So yes, it's all. It is all pretty much first, second position kind of playing right in here. Yeah. And then we have an open A here, and it's just really easy to play this D and then reach up and play the B, which is only up a sixth from the D. Right, so it's you don't need to have this doubling your second violin. Right, you could easily play up higher on that if you wanted to. And then here. Just one little thing, and that is the reason why this is tied is because of the way that the left hand worked in the accompaniment pattern in the piano score, right? So you had the left hand little finger playing this, and then the second finger would hit this B right here and hold it, while the little finger came down and hit very solidly again on that same E, right? So he's telling it's basically it's a physical thing, right? It's like it's telling the player to hold on to that and then hit that lower note and then play this note above, right? So bum 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 da, right? So it's like it's just something that's there for because you want to hold that finger, but there's really no need for us to follow that at all, right? This could easily just be quarter notes, right? See, this is the way that the player would rather read it. And it's the same thing here, right? That should be a quarter note. And it's the same thing here, and here, and here, right? So those should all be quarter notes. So, and that's just so much stronger, right? Okay. But I like the way that this is realized in clarinets and pizzicato strings. I think that works really, really well. So as far as the melodic development is concerned, I think you're doing it exactly right here. You know, and just like letting the piccolo take over on the very, very highest notes, and then. About the only thing that I would say about this part right in here, this you have very, very exposed piccolo. So are you possibly taking away the sense of that just really ultimate height of like the end of this line and this big arc right here by having the piccolo very exposed and very audible right in here? You know, it's just like there is an emotional cost, right? Like that is what Falla is trying to sort of transmit here, is that there is real like emotional power to going as high as you can on the piano to express this melody, right? And then the same thing here, going up to that highest E on the piano. It just has so much energy, and you know, it's almost unbelievable, like he immediately is just throwing this whole opening section right in your face with these very, very high pitches. Okay, great for him. But like, are we blunting that effect by having the piccolo so exposed as the top voice here? Now here it's not a problem because there's a big density of wind timbre and it's all really collected right up there, just as if we're being played by the hands on the piano, right? But it's just right in here. All of a sudden, piccolo is practically the solo voice here, and yeah. So is this D and this E here now just not so exceptional because you've got B's and C's right in here? So it's just something to think about. All right. All right, and then okay, so yeah, this is all nicely done. You know, I might start the ottava a bar early here, right? Just so that it's a nice long straight line, right? I just think that that's easier on the harpist, and I would throw in the G natural back here, right? Just you're saying A sharp because you want this, and then here you got the G sharp. Yeah, so I would say A sharp, G natural here, right? And then you don't have to worry about it going forward because there's no G sharp needed at all, right? Okay, so that takes us to right here. Now, I have been kind of hammering my participants here for not making a clear enough distinction between the end of this phrase and the beginning of the next phrase, really starting on 2, just going 2, 3, 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, right? So it's really just, just starting on that second beat, and that just basically stating the E here and then having 4 E's in a row kind of blunts that effect. Okay, however, I will give you a pass on it because everything else drops, right? So everything sails up to that high E, and then the music drops, even though the first violins are continuing on the same note. The introduction of new things to the texture, that ticks the box of the whole feeling of relentlessness here if the orchestration is the same, and of course it isn't at all, right? You take different approaches for these two sections, more or less. And while the approach here is a little similar between these two B sections, it's different enough, right? And then right in here we have something new with the more emphatic brass being a bigger part of the sound picture. Now here I don't think you need to do as much dynamic mixing as you do, right? I think that you might have a better effect here, like seeing as everything is sort of accented and just kind of really driving and so on. I think it's good enough just to go to a forte with your winds and a mezzo forte with your brass. I think that would be fine. Now, here you seem to have added a tenuto and a staccato. Okay, so just be aware that that means that you're going to go unga, right? Unga, unga, unga. So unga, unga, unga. So you really like if you're going to do a tenuto staccato, you don't even bother with the accent, right? It's just telling the player to play a little louder, right? It's like there is almost no way that they're going to put a little spike at the beginning of the note and have a tenuto after that, and then have a release on the staccato between each note to make each one separate. That's just ridiculous. So the effect here is just going to be unga, unga, unga. So you might as well just leave out if you really want that bouncy kind of a sound, then leave out the accent mark. Now, however, if you're hearing me sing unga and you're thinking, oh, that kind of is icky, it gives me the creeps. So just get rid of the tenuto mark and you have an accented staccato. Right? And if that sort of seems a little too abrupt, then just get rid of the staccato and restore it to what it was in the piano score, which is just accents. Dun, 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 dun. Right? I have to say, frankly, I don't feel that the tenuto staccato is really indicated here. I don't think that there's the sense of bounce. I mean, it just feels a little weird. But one way or another, don't do accent and tenuto staccato together. I don't think that that's really a thing. I mean, sometimes you see it in a score, but it's just kind of turning into a stack of articulation marks above a note that, just gets to be a bit much after a while. Yeah, and as I said before, the harp is not going to be audible in this situation. So you might as well just bring the volume of everything up and not worry about the harp, because it wouldn't be audible at the lower volume of everything. So just, just forte on the winds and strings and mezzo forte on the brass, I think is fine right in here. Okay, now I like this whole idea, the molto marcato oboes and English horn clarinets and so on. I think the trade-off here is nice. Okay, the problem is that oboe plus English horn is in no way can balance with a single trombone, right? So it's, I mean, and you can hear that in the mock-up, right? When the trombone comes in, it's just all about the trombone. That's it. Like, all you can hear is trombone in there, right? It's like you can sort of hear this from above, and it doesn't really sound like the theme anymore. It just sounds like harmonization of this big, strong, beefy trombone down here. So if you're going to bring trombone in here, then you got to bring in the trumpet in here to balance it. And if you do that, then like what's going on with the winds and everything else, right? If you want to ease this part in too, better to start the bar before at pianissimo and then crescendo, and then the trombone part will just slowly work its way into the texture of the line, right? So I think just starting off forte right in here, you just suddenly hear the trombone and it takes over everything, and these poor instruments have got, they are minimized. If these people get a dashed diminuendo, then so does the trombone, because you're leading to this next part, right? And here you've got. Did you notice like the real kind of almost phony, like in the mock-up, there was almost this like phony French, like this stereotype French kind of a sound, like the sort of the French accordion kind of a sound, right? It's just like it's the reeds phasing, right? And that's what happens when you have something that is very. In the clarinets, it's very, very pointy. It's very aggressive, and it's right in the throat tones, especially right in those throat tones. So, look, if you want that sound, then you get something similar with real instruments. Maybe not quite as corny sounding, right? So sort of like the mock-up is making it sound kind of corny. With real instruments, it'll sound actually really cool, right? I'm just laughing because of the sound of the mock-up. Nothing against your scoring. But, I mean, do we need to start I mean, is it enough for the line from before to sort of swell up to, like, start forte and then swell up a little bit, and then diminuendo with the dash diminuendo, which should be just written in as regular diminuendo, hairpin, and then end up here at a forte, right? Would a forte be strong enough? I'm thinking, because it's like here you've got fortissimo and you're stomping around here with your winds, and we can barely hear this accompaniment down here. Yeah, I think it just sort of needs to balance a little bit right in here. I think that there's so much dynamic mixing, pianissimo here, mezzo forte pizzicato there, mezzo piano there. Try to have a more homogeneous approach to your dynamics, just like so that there's a general thing. And this is kind of an example that I like to point out, but it really is true, and that is, let's say you've got two players from the same section, the same wind section, and one of them has got a mezzo forte marked and the other one has got a piano part marked, and they're doing very similar things. And the person who's playing the part marked piano is hearing the guy near them playing mezzo forte, and they're thinking to themselves, that guy's really playing that, what they think is a piano dynamic. They think that guy's really playing that louder. And the conductor doesn't seem to mind. Well, maybe I'll play a little louder too, right? Or we're going to have the reverse effect. The guy can be playing mezzo forte and thinking, everybody around me is playing kind of soft. Maybe I should be playing softer at exactly the moment where the orchestrator feels they should be louder, right? So I would say just try to avoid so much intense dynamic mixing, right? Try to have the parts do the work, right? Like the registers and the timbral quality and everything else do the work, rather than the each individual line sort of be kind of like levels on a fader, right? Well, you kind of want to avoid that sort of fader approach. So our big concern right in here is contrast of color and breadth of texture and middle register scoring, because in the piano score, Falla is still sort of sitting right there in the middle. He's not playing notes as high as he used to, except for the occasional interjecting E's, right, that he throws in here and there, right, which you have chosen to score in different ways. And but it's mainly just like everything's right in the middle, and he has the further problem of having really closely spaced functions, melodies and accompaniment figures and inner voices that are doing different harmonic roles and everything. It's just all really close together. So how do you get those functions to really work with each other without without overpowering one another? And look, I mean, to kind of return to the whole question of dynamic mixing, I see what you're trying to do here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that your approach is off or shabby or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I mean, I can see how you want to reinforce the clarinets here with a little bit of color from the from muted trumpet, and I mean, like they're really great ideas. I'm just not sure how practical it will be, like with a live orchestra, right? Yeah, and fortissimo bassoons and the piano to forte cellos and so on. I think that there's just a lot going in there. I think that it's better to use the colors of the instruments to differentiate the functions, rather than differentiating the dynamics so extremely. So right in here, this is really cool. You can bring in the viola earlier, right? The viola can play all the way down to this E. And you can bring in the second violin a little earlier, right? So just watch out for the whole problem of the left hand playing the first three notes and then the right hand playing the rest of the notes. Now, you're avoiding that a little bit. You're starting a little bit earlier than that, but it was sort of a trap that some orchestrators fell into, of just thinking because the line split across the hands, then it should split across instruments, which it doesn't need to. So I would say just bring in the instruments as soon as you can. It's still, like if you can bring in the violas earlier, right, then you can maybe you can leave the cellos out earlier, and then they have more time to jump up to this pizzicato. Non-divisé E on 3. Yeah, yeah. I mean that's fine. Done, done, done. Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, and wood blocks. Yeah, I mean, it's it's pretty cool. I gotta say. I mean, I really like the way that you scored a lot of things in here. And bum, 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 bum. You know, as far as the violas are concerned, they could actually come in from the beginning right in here and double all the way through. Yeah, and you know those high E's that you throw in, they're not. I mean, you're kind of the way that you've scored them. They are not really obtruding into the sound picture all that much. They're okay, and you know if you were to hold back on some of the dynamics here or to sort of make them more standardized, then I think you could get away with some of this harp scoring. But of course, like the more you throw in harp along with heavy brass and stuff, the more it just becomes invisible. Even mezzo piano in your lower brass and mezzo forte in your harp. Like you could make this fortissimo and then you would get a bit of a pluck at the beginning of this, right? But still, it's just like the power of three trombone players compared to one harpist. But you know, the funny thing is, I've heard trombone, melodic trombone, blend beautifully with harp. But then the harp was taking a more active role, right, rather than doubling. Yeah, English horn. I love this English horn, horn. That combination together, just as long as they're balanced. Here you're going forte to mezzo piano. I think that's a pretty good balance. Okay, and now we're getting to da 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 dum. Now I think you're missing a bunch of slurs in here. So because I'm just seeing a lot of da 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 bum. Right. So it's yeah. So just don't leave out those slurs, okay? Because the way that it's scored now, I mean, it's obvious that you intend this to be slurred, but you know you can hear it in the mock-up. All of your virtual clarinetists going ta da da ta da da ta da da ta da da. Right. It doesn't quite have that beautiful smoothness. All right. Bum 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 ba da da dum. This is really lovely. I love this tenor bassoon, right? And then you trade off to English horn, right? And this is trading off, right? You're insinuating the third horn. You know, what if you came in, you know, instead of having this tenuto mark, what if you came in with a pianissimo and then crescendo to mezzo forte here, right? Bum bum bum, and then you come back. Yeah, and this is trumpet plus first horn, muted, or sorry, stopped. Yeah, it's interesting. So unmuted horn plus stopped, excuse me, unmuted trumpet plus stopped horn. That's a very cool sound. So, you know, keeping in mind that it is not going to calm down here, right? It's going to still have that snarly sound. And you can get that snarly sound to be really, really soft and get really, really way down there in dynamic strength, but it still is going to be snarly, right? And like we're getting into our concerns here of keeping the triplets from overwhelming the melodic line. I feel that you do that fine. And then also the question of the widely reaching left-hand patterns being realized onto other instruments. And, you know, here you have bass clarinet working with contrabassoon. It's just such a great team that, you know, between those two players. And then here you have second bassoon coming in and so on. And then just the two bassoons working together. And I think that works really, really well. Here you seem to have two bass clarinetists, though. So I think that this might be. I'm wondering if this were originally a bassoon thing that got copy pasted here, and then you forgot to take the second bassoon part out or something. Anyway. Now from C, I feel that this works really, really well. I think that you are kind of using a less is more approach here. You are holding on to the pitches as they rise. I think that's great, and you're doing it very economically, right? Just the bassoon family and lower strings, and then eventually adding the upper strings. And then right in here, this works really, really well. But I would say just have a bigger roll, like a bigger roll. What does that mean? A bigger harp roll. So I'd say cover more notes in each hand, and maybe even have a hand over hand roll here. So, left, right, left at the top again. I think that would work really, really well. Now, generally speaking, the harp scoring on this page, like right here and right here, is terrific. Now, if you're finding yourself, if you're finding it hard to hear the harp in here, and that's just because you have pizzicato going on at the same time in the middle strings. The middle strings are going to muddle your harp, right? So it's just like, unless the harp really were fairly well separated from acoustically from the rest of what was going on here, like say maybe an octave higher or something, I just don't think you would have much of a chance until like maybe towards the end, right? Like and also like bringing it up. So here you sort of want the harp to sort of arc upwards to there. So I would say like maybe this bar, at fortissimo with a crescendo towards the end would do what you needed to do to reach there. But, maybe have it finish with a nice rolled chord or something that with an A on top. But, I still feel that this, there's a lot of features about this. Like, I still think that these 3 beats right in here are going to somewhat disappear. So, like, maybe starting here is a better approach. Okay, so let's not get too hung up in the harp, though. Yeah. So, all right. So we're pushing forward to here, and I really like once again, the simplicity of the accompaniment. I think is very, very cool. I mean, it's not what I would do, but I think that it works pretty good for what you've set up here. Just really, you have the 16th notes. It's funny, like the the very mechanical interpretation of the tempo there by the playback. It's sort of making this kind of sound like da 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 da. It's like it has that kind of weird $6 Million Man kind of slowed down echo. Okay, let's talk about what doppio più lento ma sempre mosso means. Okay, so like you've just come from this faster, the half note equals 60 or 66 in the piano score. So half as fast, right? So if you're thinking that like what's the tempo there, it would be like around 180 per quarter note, right? So let's just say we're 60 for the dotted half note is 180 per quarter note, right? So what is that? What is half as fast as 180 per quarter note? It is 90 per quarter note, right? Okay, so that wouldn't be, see, like right here you've got sempre meno, right? So you're basically kind of going under that tempo, and you're also adding some fluctuations here, just to grab all of this. So yeah, so we can see that you played around a bit with the tempo, just similar to how the pianists do it, and I think that's great. But I feel it gets a little too fiddly after a while, right? And I think it'd be better just to bring the tempo up to a true, ma sempre mosso, right? So half as fast, 90 plus a little something, which I think I scored as like 100, which I think that's about where the pianists play it. So I think that like doing that. Like the orchestra is going to need to play things steadier, not to be so capricious with the tempo as the pianists do. Now the pianists can get away with it because like one person is controlling the nuances and the is being able to stretch and contract and so on the tempo as much as they like and have it make artistic aesthetic sense. But I don't think you can quite get away with that with an orchestra as much. It would if you really want that effect, I think you should say, rubato, right? Doppio più lento, ma sempre mosso, e rubato, right? So then you can everybody can sort of play around with it till they're comfortable. But that's really something that that your soloists are going to decide. So speaking of what the soloists are going to decide, all right, you have got to be the person that expresses this, right? You know, bien chantant, you know, very expressive. Yeah, so look, it's you have to write all that in terms of nuances. I think that's what Falla would want if you were to orchestrate this, right? So he's not going to say this is stuff that you kind of tell the conductor, right? I think it's more that like you have to write this all out in terms of the expressive contours of the music, right? So, you know, for instance, like add a little crescendo here and diminuendo there, some crescendo here, some diminuendo there. Make this portato, and then what do you get? Da 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 da. Right, and then going on more portato. Da 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 da. Bum 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 bum. Da 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 da. And don't diminuendo. Dun da da da. And then you can diminuendo here. That's fine, right? Okay, and notice like that. I think where is it? Yeah, here you get up to 92, right? Which is is essentially ma sempre mosso of doppio più lento, right? So it's just a little bit more than 90. And you can hear that wonderful effect, right? Just that lovely energy of the lower strings and so on, the pizzicato coming in here, and the bassoons and so on. It just like, you know, it sort of has this kind of dancing tiger in the background that is just ready to just spring forward. And then this is nice too. You know, you've got the you sort of have changed this into kind of roaming violas and first violins, and you've given the measured tremolo to your seconds. Now here, I think the kalimba part is just a little too loud. Okay, the kalimba is a slightly detuned instrument. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't know what the sound set is being used here. It sort of sounds like glockenspiel, actually, right? so this, you know, here I would bring it back a little bit. I think it's sort of taking some of the charm out of your flute solo. I mean, I love the idea of the flute and the English horn playing unison right in here. I mean, considering that the evaluation criterion that applies to this is the careful treatment of the melodic voice to make it feel authentic to the composer's style, I feel that does apply here. I think that's such a cool idea. I mean, do you need the flute in there? But I mean, it still works really great as a combination because you're getting the slightly thinner sound of the English horn right at the point where the flute starts to gain strength. So it's a neat idea to double those. And then here, just flute coming in all by itself. That's also very strong. But once again, nuances, right? You know, a little crescendo, diminuendo, some portato here, right? So portato, by that I mean this, right? So slurred tenuto. So you get that, you just get that lovely pulsing sound. And then A2. And then I felt that like the little recommended tempo fluctuations here that I put into the template worked really, really good on your score. Yeah, and, you know, I like the just a touch of harp coming in here. That was really great. One thing though, I kind of felt that there was just a little bit more strength that could have arisen from the rest of the orchestra right in here. You know, you know, I just felt like there was there could have been a little bit more meat to the accompaniment right in here, right? You know, just whether it was like a swelling chord or some other kind of thing. Just for these 3 or 4 beats, and then pulling back, of course, to leave this nice and empty. Now here, I don't feel that this is necessary at all. I think that this is all perfectly playable on your C trumpet. I think if the trumpet player is going to be doubling the flutes and all that, and they've got enough support from below, I think that, you know, their lip is obviously warm from what's happened before. So just have your first player, you know, crank that out. I think that would work fine. Yeah. And then the rubato worked really, really well here. See, I've got some tempo fluctuations of my own right through here, right? This is kind of what pianists do, right? They've got a rallentando immediately, so that there's a fermata right there, and then they sort of push again, and then they do another rallentando, and then they have this just they just really cut loose here, dun, 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 dun. Right? Such a cool way of interpreting, and it works really, really well. So I think that all worked great on your score. Now, right in here, we're getting to the yeah, and then glissandos. I don't think these are going to have much effect. I think better to have pizzicato with your basses to get plucking sound down here. Maybe pizzicato with the basses, and you've already got the bassoon, contrabassoon right in here. You could have some, you could supplement what you want to happen here with a harp in other instruments. Okay, so we're leading to this part. So I think if you're going to go fortissimo piano, then right here you need to go same thing here, forte pianissimo, right? I think you really need to drop, because this is obscuring the motion of the bass instruments in here. Just that, hanging on these Ds, you can't really hear the things moving back and forth right in here. Here, I'd say divisi as required. This is intended for this staff, right? Okay, so this is strange. I see. Divisi as required. Yeah, so I don't think you need to. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So because some players would be able to play this as just be able to pluck both notes at once, right? And then here you're thinking, oh well, people who've got the C extension or the C string will be able to play these notes. And so I think this is all completely unnecessary. Just score it out exactly, score everything out on one staff. Don't worry about this right in here. Just have everybody the same, okay? Right, and then you're coming in here arco. Yeah, just have everybody the same, and the players will work it out, okay? Just leave it up to them. Don't try to over control this or be too helpful with that. That just they will work it out. They'll play an octave higher if they need to. They'll understand. Or you can just add some. You can just make this all in one voice and just add some little supplementary notes in parentheses if you want to, an octave higher, just to let people know. Okay. All right. So then you've got bass drum and timpani rolls and so on, and this is all rather fun. I mean, just you just sort of have to think about a bass drum roll. Do you just sort of want that rattling background, right? Do you kind of want that kind of, because that tends to sort of absorb some of the sound of everything else that's going on in the bass, right? This has a kind of absorptive kind of a thing. It can also sort of resemble kind of a machine hum or drone in the background. So anyway, so just think about that possibility, that it might kind of interfere with what you have going on. This is so cool that you extend this out and you just really climb with your, with this big swelling part in here. I think that is just an awesome, and then having the horns come in here and push a little bit, and then withdrawing. I think you could have, one possible amendment here would be to have the strengthening ease off into this bar rather than just dropping before the bar comes in, right? So that it all sort of winds back down very evenly. So I really, really enjoyed this. I thought that this was nicely done. My biggest my biggest beef with this, if you can call it that, is I kind of felt that, like, once you take out the lower strings, you really feel their absence, right? So maybe you just forgot to put them in. There are some things one or two things that it sort of feels like you didn't proof this part on the using the mock-up, which is perfectly fine. There's no need for you to do that unless you miss something, right? Okay, so at this point, according to our evaluation criteria, I felt that it's very important to maintain the hallucinatory feeling of the music, right? There's very straightforward building blocks, but there's, like, as pianists play it, there's just a sense of almost like a sort of a reeling effect to the just the colors of the piano and just the pianist playing around with the tempo a little bit, and the wonderful effect of the harmony, and just adding up all those things together just really it seems like people they're really letting their party and get away with them. By the way, apologies for this cutoff. I reorganized your pages. I think this is why this happened right in here with this trumpet coming in. I suppose I could have pulled this back to here. All right. Anyway, there's no need to do that, though. Okay, so let's just talk about the orchestration of it. Yeah. You've got these, and yeah. Bum, 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 bum. So once again, unga. So do you really want that? Da, 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 unga, 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 unga. Da, 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 unga, unga, unga. You really want that sort of unga sound, right? In the piano part, of course, Falla has just stuck big slurs over everything. So of course you can change the articulation style and everything else, right? Yeah, but then right in here, like you are trading the bass off to the to your lower brass, and I just kind of wonder, like, could you have maintained the same positions of like you sort of, it seems like you're sort of doing that here, da 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 da, ba 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 ba, right? But then here you stay with these very low pitches instead of just jumping up again and then jumping down again in the next time the bass comes around. Yeah, I think that there's absolutely nothing that would be detracted from your orchestration right in here if you were to have your lower strings play a role here. Violas and cellos, and then cellos and basses, and then maybe all three together or something, just jumping back and forth, and then also just maintaining the different octaves, higher, lower, like the contrabassoons could be playing up an octave and then down an octave, back and forth. And because I think that that bum 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 ba 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 bum ba 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 ba. I think that just works. It just helps to open out the music. And then, as before, I totally think you can have the that your lower strings joining in here, even though this feels like a different function, right? But still, they can play both roles without it distracting from this just sort of massive double stop, triple stop kind of scoring that you've got in here. I think that would all work fine. So this all works great. This rallentando here, da 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 bum. This is something that I advised other orchestrators about, and I think this really applies to your score. Like, you've got this massive push, right? So the agitato should start on the eighth note here, and you should put in a little comma or a pausa, right? So just like a little, or apostrophe, and make all of these pitches eighth notes, right? And then I would also just like have the especially the lower strings end boom at the same time. So, and then like after that eighth note, add your little comma, right? And then start people off right on this, right? So the problem that is going to occur here is with this big low end that you've got here from your trombones and everybody else going nuts, and this bass drum stroke, there is going to be this big cushion of reverb that goes throughout the hall. And here you got xylophone and harp working together, which, by the way, are just not the most balanced instruments. Like if it were better, it might be better if you had like celesta and harp working together. But be that as it may. So you want the beginning of this rotating pattern to be very, very clear, right? So if you go boom on the downbeat and then just a slight comma to place beat 1.5. Right, so that it's just, you know, the the conductor can get past that big reverb that is distracting, because otherwise we're not going to really hear this pattern until right about here. Now, you've got horns, you've got fortissimo winds right in here, and you've got harp trying to be heard, right? So I don't think you can have both. I think that you've got to make a choice here. So, like, what if you had glockenspiel and xylophone playing this together? What if they were playing off of each other, right? But it's just that the harp, like, the harp is so weak compared to the xylophone. The xylophone will absorb everything that's going on in the harp. It'll just basically suck up all of its tone right in there. So, you know, frankly speaking, you're better off just without any harp in there at all, or putting the harp up like a couple of octaves in order to be heard. So it would be better for the harp to be the higher instrument and the xylophone to be the lower instrument. But, I mean, then you kind of get into more weirdness and other problems. But yeah, but just, you know, the strength of the horns, even at forte, rather than fortissimo, then fortissimo wins, and then here you're coming back with some held winds, which probably wouldn't be the biggest problem, but it really is the xylophone that just kind of is driving me crazy in this equation. I just wonder if there's some way to rethink this. I love the glockenspiel right in here. I think that works really great, and I love this whole idea right in here of the trumpets, you know, going. I think that works pretty good. I would have the trumpets going. It would going da di da, right? So da di da, da di da, da di da, and then the second trumpet going dun 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 dun, right? So just like have them each play 3 notes, interlacing each other. And this is all really cool. This bump 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 bump. I love that English horn working together with the bassoons and the lower strings right in here, and then this slowing down right in here. So I think that like you could throw in some slurs and everything else just to start to kind of cushion things out, ease back on the staccatissimo, right? So that we have a nice warm, gentler trade-off to the next section. So I found this really intriguing right in here, this poco più lento part. Yeah, it's just so cool. This, I think that this is an example of the harp working really well. Mezzo forte, not mezzo piano. So if you want to balance this register of harp with the clarinet and so on. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really nice. And then you have the pizzicato coming in here, interlacing with the harp. Yeah, see, like this is checking off a lot of boxes in my evaluation criteria. So authenticity of style, in choice of melodic voice, oboe works great. Rotating patterns, how to score in such a way that maintains interest, and if harp is to be used, how to avoid predictability. So you totally are doing that with interlacing with the with pizzicato and so on. I think, yeah, finishing the pizzicato, I think that that's a good idea. Yeah, and I would also have the pizzicato sneak in, so start pianissimo and then crescendo to piano, so that it doesn't overwhelm the harp, right? Yeah, really nice. Any way of simplifying this rhythmically, right? You know, couldn't you score this, right? Just so much easier to read. And then the same thing all the way through here. Right? I mean, your players will thank you for it. They will love you for it. Or, well, they won't thank you for it because they won't know that there was a decision that you could have made that would have made it harder to read, right? So, but anyways, yeah, just keep it simple for them, right? And yeah, just this is all really lovely. Da 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 dum. Ba dum. And then trading off to flute. Ba 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 da 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 da. Yeah, so cool. And then going to the going to violins there. Da 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 plus trumpet. Da 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 dum. Bum 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 ba dum. Yeah, just so nice. I just really love the way that this all kind of chugs along. And here you've got reverse accents, right? So yeah, so for people watching this, so it's just starting soft and then pushing a little bit on each one. Yeah, so I mean that's it. Kind of gets repetitive to look at, but that's the general idea. Just kind of like having a slight push into each note. So here's one of those places where I feel that you may not have used the mock-up to proof what you were doing, because this is completely inaudible both in the mock-up and in real life, right? So yeah, you have your first violins playing just slightly higher than these stopped horns or the stopped horn. So that there's just kind of no way. If this were pianissimo and this were piano, and then the diminuendo was here, then that might be audible, but it still would have problems because just the sound of the horn is so penetrating, and it really just sucks up everything that is on top of it, right? I mean, you would be better off, say, with like English horn here or some other kind of instrument, right, that didn't have, but like, ba da 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 dum. I mean, this should just really be a beautiful, elegant line that has nothing in its way acoustically, that there's no problems to solve. It is just doing what it needs to do. So I would say that this is a sort of a beautiful idea in some respect. It's just really getting in the way of stating this beautiful, simple line. Okay, and then I love the little, that you threw in an extra beat here, and you got the pause on the fermata on the on the fourth beat with the fermata, and then that just takes us here. That's lovely. Yeah. So alto flute. I think that that's a very cool choice to make there. I think that this all adds up to my next criterion, conveying a sense of icy distance, interpreting the piano's coloration. I think that here the harp isn't wasted either. I think that's nice, and just a little bit of kalimba. I mean, you might as well have glockenspiel there, I think. Yeah, and then this here we're bringing on the ice, right? You're looking back at that party after having floated down the river on your into the scented night with your favorite person sitting beside you in the boat, and you look back at that distant hill with all the lights and the excitement, and you can hear just a touch of music coming back to you across the darkness, right? Under the moonlight. All right. now you throw in some alto flute. Da 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 dum. So nice. Yeah, and you keep this really, softly accompanied. Very, very wise. It's so cool. Yep. Yeah, that all works really, really great. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, so look, I've got mixed opinions about this, about splitting this up. Da da dum, da da dum. I think you should have your violas also play the da da part. I think it needs to, there needs to be a sense of connection, because I think da 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 is what you're going to end up hearing. Da da da. This note starting is not going to feel smoothly connected to the notes above it. So I would say have the violas also go da da, so da da dum, so you really feel the slurring of the bow down to that note, da da dum, and don't separate them. Just really have it slur down, da da dum, da dum, and same thing here. Yeah, and now finishing this up. Okay, I think that this is also really beautifully done. This bum with the alto flute down there. Okay, and there's one little thing that maybe you didn't consider is that when the pianist is holding down the pedal, the notes from this bar sustain all the way to the end because they don't change the pedal, right? So like, that might be something that you noticed in the piano score. If you didn't, that's the way that pretty much everybody plays it. They go da da dum, and then they add this bum at the end. So couldn't you just tie this B? Right? Is there some way of having these pitches tie forwards and this pitch tie forwards, and then add these E's by other instruments? Yeah, and that's, yeah, these lovely little harp harmonics at the end. Yeah, so look, there's, yeah, the takeaway here, Hayden, is that it mostly works, right? And so what I've suggested is just to try to get it to work even better, right? And, you know, what can I do as your orchestration coach to make this come out and, you know, be an unmitigated triumph, right? We're taking away the mitigation factors and to make it, you know, something that you feel really, really good about. As we're getting towards the end of these evaluations, we're starting to run across more and more scores that are nearly ready for the stands. And this is one just like Luca's before and so on. So, you know, we're kind of having a little run here of scores that are fairly ready. But, you know, all the same, I would say just check out some of those things, like, you know, just might not work, you know, throwing in horn there. I mean, here you've got the horn, a more powerful instrument, louder than the melody, right? So I think you just need to rethink some things, maybe some audio proofing of the mock-up, not that, you know, really determines anything, but it can show you when you may have overbalanced a texture or something. So, yes, but I really, really like this score. You know, once again, I'm seeing people really apply themselves in wonderfully imaginative ways that, you know, that are really artistically valid, right? And making me think, oh, geez, why didn't I think of that? Oh, I can think of how I could have made what my intentions were even a little bit better because of something that I learned from looking at this person's score or that person's score. And it really is getting more and more that way as we're getting towards the end here in this last big push. So thank you so much for this, Hayden. It's just, you know, it's great to see one of your entries in the orchestration challenge. And I think that you will be very interested in next year's challenge. It's going to provide something that is just as inspirational, but as I've been mentioning all along, in a completely different way. Right, so think about that. That will be announced in 10 months. See, now we're like, it took 2 months to get through this. So actually, is it 9 months? I'm thinking, yeah, I better not think about it too much, because then I'll just become a person who does nothing but these orchestration challenges all year long, and I won't have time to do anything else. But it's been really, really fun, and it's been a joy, and I'm so grateful to all of my supporters, Hayden and everybody else who is helping make this challenge possible, and of course the great contributions that you're all supplying, and everybody out there who is still with me by this point in the in the evaluation. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the comments, for the reactions, sharing these videos. It all makes a difference. And I'll see you again with another really, really great but slightly too short evaluation coming up next time.